It's Joe Biden's world now, and the question is, can he fix it? Can he rebuild global alliances that fell victim to a Trump foreign policy best likened to Godzilla in a China shop? Can Biden restore faith in democracy, now in retreat around the world? The new administration says in this first year of Biden's presidency, there will be a global summit of democracies to renew the spirit and the shared purpose of the nations of the free world. Just add that to an already long to-do list. Joining us now from Singapore is Parag Khanna, a former senior advisor to the US Defense Department and author of The Future is Asian: Global Order in the 21st Century. It has been years, and it is good to have you with us for the first time, Parag.
Likewise, John. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Okay, it was a bit like Back to the Future this week at the White House. After Biden and Putin spoke on Wednesday, there was one of these things. It was a blast from the pre-Trump past to read out a President Joseph R. Biden Jr. call with President Vladimir Putin. Just 144 words all up, but at least there was official word these two leaders spoke. It seems the conversation was nothing like the last 4 years. A little more now from the US president.
I find that we can both operate in the mutual self-interest of our countries as a New START agreement and make it clear to Russia that we are very concerned about their behavior, whether it's Navalny, whether it's the solar winds, or whether it's reports of bounties on the heads of Americans in Afghanistan.
In many ways, it's a return to how the US would deal with Russia in the past. Is Russia now willing to play by the old rules?
Well, that's a good question. They at least got the elephant in the room out of the way, so to speak, the START agreement, agreeing to a 5-year extension of the START agreement in terms of freezing the strategic nuclear arsenals. But two big challenges remain even within that. The first is, of course, Russia's development of smaller range nuclear warheads. And the second is whether or not China can be brought into that START agreement. And the U.S. is going to need Russia's help on that front. But at the moment, there's little interest from China. So whether or not there's a change in mood or personal chemistry or dynamic, the strategic questions still lie ahead. And let's remember, when it comes to Alexei Navalny, given the pressure that is being put on Putin's regime right now, the Biden administration doesn't want to take any major steps towards political reconciliation that would be seen as legitimizing Putin when, in fact, he's on the ropes.
Yeah, there's also climate change, and the US is now back in that Paris Accord. That was kind of the easy part. There is another international agreement, though. It was brokered by the United States, and it was then broken by Donald Trump. So this seems a little more challenging, the Iran nuclear deal. Here's the new Secretary of State.
If Iran comes back into full compliance with its obligations under the JCPOA, the United States would do the same thing, and then we would use that as a platform to build with our allies and partners what we call a longer and stronger agreement, and to deal with a number of other issues that are deeply problematic in the relationship with Iran. But we are a long ways from that point.
Given the fact that it was a US president who violated the terms of the deal, and until recently Iran remained in compliance, it does get to the question of moral authority and, I guess, leverage. And are there a limit in the options here for the Biden administration because of the way the Trump administration actually handled this?
Well, there's no question that the Biden administration does want to go back to JCPOA. After all, it was former Secretary of State John Kerry and current National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan who were intimately involved in those negotiations. And there's evidence and sentiment that Iran does as well. But let's remember that, the Trump's maximum pressure campaign did a lot of damage. So the Iranians have a strong incentive to want to come back to the table. However, the new Secretary of State in his comment alluded to a sort of chicken and egg problem that we have here, because Iran also has statements or even legislation that say that should there not be sanctions relief, Iran will go back to uranium enrichment. So the question is, who's going to move first? And Washington is divided about whether to offer relief or whether to push harder. Let's remember some of the strategic backdrop, the Abraham Accords. There is the stronger Israeli government alignment with Arab countries to keep Iran cornered, while on the other hand, Russia and China continue to embrace Iran quite openly with new energy agreements and other investments.
And with China, it does seem that the days of launching missiles at Syria while enjoying chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago are over. But in many ways, Biden seems okay to continue with a number of Trump's economic policies like tariffs. What do you expect Beijing to do?
Well, so China's response to what the U.S. has been doing and is going to continue to do is probably more of the same. Let's remember that, and you and I know this from our time when we've met in Beijing, that China has been pursuing this policy of strategic autonomy, of self-reliance, of moving up the value chain, neo-mercantilism globally for 20, 25 years. That's what its economic and technological policies have been about. And now it goes under the name dual circulation, for example. But China is going to continue to do what it has been doing. There has been some effect in terms of the U.S. pushback. Just look at how Huawei's share, for example, of the global telecom equipment market has dropped considerably in the last few years. So I think those tensions will continue. However, the Biden administration is going to be more focused on bringing in a coalition of countries. Some would call it the T10 or the D10. So democratic countries with shared technology ambitions to pull the production of sensitive equipment, electronics, medical equipment, and other sorts of devices out of China into allied countries like India, Southeast Asia, and others. And that, in terms of creating a parallel set of supply chains, that also will have a dent in China's ability to dominate some markets where it's had a very long runway.
Final question, Parag. It's been 4 years of a lot of damage done to the post-World War II system, which was built by the United States of international cooperation. And this is the question. Biden, 78 years old, I mean, is he the guy who can actually repair that damage in such a short period of time?
Well, I mean, at the beginning you said it's worse than a bull in a china shop. It's been like Godzilla has been in the china shop. And I don't think that the world is, can be fixed, rebuilt quite so quickly, and I think that it's really going to have to be a much more collective effort among like-minded countries, issue by issue. Let's take the economic system, for example, in terms of getting the U.S. back into certain trade agreements. That would be critical in terms of, promoting common standards, elevating the standards of existing trade agreements. That's just one area. Global financial system, confidence and trust around areas like vaccine distribution, climate change. It really is more than Biden can do alone. And of course, as we have seen in the case of Iran, which we talked about, Russia, these are regimes that have long outlasted the last several U.S. presidents. And given, as you indicated in your question, Biden's age, they are really going to continue with their business as usual. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think what the world would be like right now with the pandemic if there had been those international institutions operating as they should have been. But I guess that's a what if. Parag, it is great to see you. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Take care.